Oh, good morning, everyone. Or good afternoon, actually. Here it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I have a bit of a croaky voice today, so that was probably because I was just so outraged by Blake Lively last night. I'm still laughing over that. That was just ridiculous. So I've had some thoughts. I have issues with Blake Lively's filing of that, apart from the fact that it was just complete crap. It tells me, excuse me, sorry. It tells me that she's got nothing. She filed with nothing. She went into it with hopes and prayers that Discovery would find her evidence, and now Discovery is closed and there's no evidence. So she has gone to judge and gone both like from a legal position and from a PR position, because she just had she's just been humiliated by the audio of Steve Sarowitz's, incredibly cute and cuddly threat that she has been whipping up for 10 months. It's going to be 9 months. I think they started using the quote in February. She's been whipping it up to be like this, demonic threat that she has to take seriously against her and her family by a man who has unlimited resources. And it turned out to be nothing. Nothing, honestly. I have said worse things when I have complained to a restaurant about my food, or when I have called Sky and complained about their service. I didn't even get the impression that Steve Sarowitz would know how to threaten someone. He's just too nice of a guy. And honestly, I come away from that audio actually adoring him. So, yeah, I had big problems with the audio. I think she's highly embarrassed, and she should be. That's embarrassing. I think at this point, someone needs to get Blake Lively a dictionary definition of a smoking gun, because the woman and her lawyers clearly do not understand what it means, and they keep filing stuff, believing in full belief that it's going to help them. It doesn't, because no one looks at this stuff with the same perception as she does, except for a few Blake Lively content creators and supporters. But most normal, rational, sane-minded people do not look at the things that she is submitting as her evidence and go, oh my God, yeah, I see it. No one's doing that. And last night was no exception. She filed those text messages between Melissa Nathan and Jen Abel, which effectively confirm two things for me. There were two big takeaways from those text messages alone. One, it confirmed that in real time, as a contemporaneous note, Wayfarer and their PR believed that Blake Lively, not just believed, they knew. They were aware that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds had pre-prepared that statement we've all now seen, asking Wayfarer to take responsibility for everything. And they were absolutely mortified in their own words. Well, I've never seen anything like this. No, I can imagine that is true. But also the second thing that it proved to me is, whilst the PR girls were like, oh, come on, I wish you'd just hire a lawyer, Wayfarer had not hired a lawyer to deal with this. They had a company lawyer, but as Jen Abel said, he needs a litigator. And they were kind of exasperated with Wayfarer because they hadn't hired one. So that kind of destroys her argument of, oh, they should have foresaw that we were going to, the litigation was pending. But also I went back through the docket last night. I didn't get much sleep over this because I went back through the docket. And to me, if they should have known, as of the wording of that letter from their attorney that was attached to the return for protections demands, if by saying that Blake Lively reserves her rights, which is a perfectly standard statement to make, it's on almost every letter from law firms, anything that's related to something legal. And I'm blown away by the idea that she thinks that places an obligation on Wayfarer. They have to now suddenly start preserving everything from that point, right? Especially in light of the fact that Blake Lively, by her own complaint, says that everything was fine in the second half. So, I've lost my train of thought now. So, so essentially, if the knowledge was supposed to have been because of that, not November 9th, 2023 letter, right? I mean, that's already an absurd position. But the next question I have is, why was this sent? This is a letter from Manette and Wilkie Farr. This is what is known as the first cease and desist demand. So this was the first cease and desist letter that Blake Lively's lawyers sent to Wayfarer, and it was sent on December 20th. And then you've got this bit here on page 4, demand to preserve and retain all relevant documents and electronically stored information. So my first question is if the November 9th letter was supposed to be interpreted as a request to preserve and retain all relevant documents and electronically stored information, why is that being repeated here at this point? But also, just throughout the entire motion, Blake Lively's motion and Stephanie Jones's, they say, well, they only preserved everything from the 20th of December. I suppose my response is no shit. That was the date of the actual formal request to preserve. It was also the date that, in my view, there was no doubt that there was potential litigation, because it was also the date the CRD was filed. I believe that this cease and desist was sent because they were well aware that Wayfarer were going to be, they would have known that the New York Times article was coming out the next day. And I believe that this was an attempt to shut them up, because Wayfarer hadn't really said anything. Well, they hadn't said anything pretty much. Everything had died down. So why randomly send a cease and desist? Because Blake Lively was anticipating the New York Times article the following day. And then, inevitably, when that happened, Wayfarer were talking about it. And a second cease and desist was sent only 3 days later. And sorry, just grab it. Here, we accordingly demand that you cease and desist from further defamation of our client, and that you take steps to preserve all of your communications relating to your statement. So this is relating to the statement. The first request for the preservation of documents was just kind of general. But this one is relating to, because obviously Brian Friedman had made a statement on behalf of Wayfarer at this point, as he rightly should. So they repeated their request to preserve documents, but it was specifically communications relating to the statement. So that's my my view on that. I knew that existed, so I think that blows some holes in Blake Lively's argument and Stephanie Jones, because basically there was a lot of lifting of what Blake Lively had put in what Stephanie Jones had put, and I'm not going to read it word for word because there's no point. I did it last night. So I have highlighted some points of interest. She also filed almost identical attachments as well. There was a problem on the docket. There was a deficiency, basically. So they're all sealed anyway. I don't think they're going to be any use here right now. But if they, if we see them unsealed and there's something different, then we will talk about it. But I think this is just as bad as Blake Lively's in many ways. In some ways, places is actually worse, and I will get to them when I get there. I've highlighted what I want to talk about. So the first starting point with Stephanie Jones's motion is that it is just against Jennifer Abel. It is not against Wayfarer. In pink, they coordinated that campaign primarily through Signal. I'm talking about the campaign, obviously, against Blake Lively. An encrypted messaging application, the very purpose of which is to ensure that messages disappear without a trace. Now, I do not think that's the purpose of Signal. It's also not the purpose of why Jennifer Abel and Wayfarer used it, and I will show you that in a bit. They did so deliberately in order to cover their tracks and indeed had a habit of turning to Signal as opposed to regular text messaging when embarking on a project they wanted to be untraceable. That claim is also a stretch, and she contradicts herself. She actually contradicts that claim here in this further on. Abel admits she knew that Signal messages auto-delete, and there is no evidence she took any steps to disable that function or preserve any of the Signal communications relevant to this action until more than 4 months after she anticipated litigation. By early August 24, litigation was not only foreseeable, it was actively contemplated. Notably, Abel chose both Nathan and Tag for Wayfarer and Baldoni, who were then JonesWorks clients, over the express objections of JonesWorks founder and Abel's boss, Stephanie Jones. Wayfarer and Baldoni in turn hired Nathan and Tag over Jones's objections and against her advice. So what I'm getting from that is Stephanie Jones is salty because, you know, they went against her wishes. Sorry, I've got a really sore throat today. The beef between Stephanie Jones and Melissa Nathan is quite simple. I did an entire thread on it. Melissa Nathan applied for a job at JonesWorks, or Stephanie Jones approached her, one of the two. Anyway, they did actually agree. Melissa Nathan was due to start employment at JonesWorks. She then changed her mind. She put forward someone else to join JonesWorks. And Stephanie Jones was not happy. I think she changed her mind because she was starting her own business. She was starting Tag. And then Stephanie Jones retaliated by interfering with a mutual client they had, someone who was sort of under JonesWorks, but had also hired Tag. Stephanie Jones interfered with that, badmouthed Melissa Nathan, and lost Tag that client. So that's why Stephanie Jones does not like Melissa Nathan. Okay. I'm just slowly skimming as well in case I see something. Right, okay. So here's the request to the court. JonesWorks therefore requests the court impose sanctions under Rule 37E, including at minimum 1, An adverse inference that the destroyed signal messages would have been favourable to Jones' works and demonstrated that the defendants, including Abel, conducted the smear campaign without Jones or Jones' works' knowledge, involvement, or approval, and that Abel's participation in the campaign for the few weeks that she remained a Jones' work employee before her termination. A was for her own personal benefit, B was not in furtherance of and was outside the course and scope of her employment and not in discharge of her duties, and C was not at Jones's or Jones' works direction. 2, preclusion of Abel from arguing otherwise, so another shut her up. And 3, monetary sanctions for the costs and prejudice caused by her spoliation. So along with the the cease and desist, and I believe that to be an attempt to basically get people to zip it. No, you can't speak. Don't speak. Don't say nothing. Knowing full well the New York Times article was going to drop the following day, and instinctively people will want to come out and go, "That's not true," or express their perception of what actually happened. And we're seeing here a pattern. There's been sanctions all the way through this litigation. Shut Brian Friedman up. We've got Rule 11 sanctions against him and Rule 3.6 over Brian Friedman's statements in defense of his client. She got us content creators to shut up for a while with subpoenas that were totally unnecessary. So unnecessary, she withdrew them at the first hint of pushback and did not attempt to get the quote-unquote evidence of smear campaign. And you think she'd need it because these filings clearly show she's got nothing. So to me, Blake Lively just has, her MO is shut everyone up, stop them talking, intimidate them, harass them legally. And she is abusing the justice system to do it. Okay. So the argument here, by the way, is I'm scrolling past it because it was just the same as Blake Lively's, that there was nothing, nothing at all. I am scrolling past it kind of slowly just in case. Now, there's nothing there. Now, this is a big thing. This is the contradictory statement here. It is undisputed that the defendants used Signal during this period to discuss the work Tag and Wallace were performing for Wayfarer. And she is implying that they have done it, used Signal specifically for the purpose that it auto-deletes, so it will hide everything. That they have done it for no other reason than that. But yeah, there is a footnote here. And this footnote says, indeed, discovery has revealed that Tag and Wallace typically communicate using Signal and voice notes to keep information private, including for their practice of, and that's redacted what that practice is. However, she, in one breath, she is saying, oh my God, these people, they started suddenly using Signal to hide everything. But then she's also having to say, but Melissa Nathan and her company Tag and Wallace typically communicate. As a matter of course, it routinely use it for their work. And to me, the dates make sense. We had Melissa Nathan, who was kind of hired at the end of, very end of July, start of August. And then you had Jed Wallace, who was kind of come in about a week later or so. And what you're seeing in these motions are, well, when in August, Jen Abel and Wayfarer started using Signal purely for the reason that they could hide their messages. No, I don't think that's what happened. I think they hired these two PR crisis experts and were advised, hey, we communicate through Signal. Would you mind downloading Signal so we can communicate? Because that's our method. That's what we use. We use it for confidentiality. They would have been explained why. But if they are communicating with two companies who, in the course of their business practice, use a specific app, it is not unreasonable. Those organizations that would have said to their clients, hey, we have a preference for Signal for these reasons. Would you mind downloading it so we can communicate through that? We do it for everyone. I just think I think she, oh my God, I'm exasperated. I think it's such a stretch to sit there and go that, Abel did this deliberately. I think is a stretch from Lively. It's an even bigger stretch from Stephanie Jones, who makes some wild, outlandish accusations here, which I will get to. But this one, I think that this contradicts the suggestion for both Blake Lively and Stephanie Jones, by the way, that Jen Abel only started using Signal in August for the sole purpose of hiding messages. I think she did it because she was advised by the two PR crisis people that were brought on, and it's their preferred method of communication. And they may well have had some very good reasons that they said, well, I think it would be better for you because of XYZ. That's why you hire these experts. That's why you hire them, for this advice and knowledge. So, yeah, boom, there goes that argument. She does also, at some point, I can't find it at the moment, but she does at some point, Stephanie Jones suggest that because Jen Abel, she says if Jen Abel was already in touch with, counsel for Wayfarer, we read that message last night. That was clearly in the context of I've worked with him previously. And I said then when I was reading it, like, that is not out the realm for me. Brian Friedman is an entertainment counsel. He's an entertainment attorney. Jen Abel is a PR. She works with famous people, celebrities. I'm not surprised that they've crossed paths and maybe worked with a mutual client at some point. Brian Friedman has he knows Jed Wallace. Jed Wallace used to be located in California and also did PR for celebrity clients. So the fact that they know each other equally does not surprise me. What is surprising to me is that this has surprised Blake Lively and Stephanie Jones, who should know how this works. And I think, they're just stretching the truth and hoping Judge Lyman is stupid enough to swallow it. And I'm not saying maybe he's not. Maybe he might well be, but I don't know. But I just think it's ridiculous. This one blew my effing mind. When Abel downloaded Signal for this matter in August 2024, she was on notice of potential litigation relating to the film and to Baldoni and Heath's harassment of Lively on set. Indeed, redacted, which warned Baldoni and Heath, right now, that redacted clearly is pointing to the November 9th, 2023 letter that accompanied the demand for Lively to get her own way. But notice here the words, warned Baldoni and Heath. not anyone else, Baldoni and Heath, that if the production is unwilling to accept or uphold these protections, our client is prepared to pursue her full legal rights and remedies. Now, problems with that statement is the wording. If the production is unwilling to accept or uphold these protections, it did accept them and it did uphold them, because Blake Lively herself, I'm getting emotional now, Blake Lively herself says in her first amended complaint, as she said it in fact in her CRD, I returned to work and everything went fine. There was no further problem. So it upheld them. And that's what negates this clause being some kind of notice that they should have preserved all documents from here on in. Our client is prepared to pursue her full legal rights and remedies, is the rest of the quote. However, Jennifer Abel was not put on notice. That letter, the 9th of November 2023, did not include Jennifer Abel. It was not sent to Jennifer Abel. It does not put her on anything. And even if she did, who's her employer? Stephanie Jones, Jonesworks. I cannot believe the legal advice these people are getting. Like, I know the lawyers have got to advocate, but honestly, they're trying to make fetch happen here. It's just stupid. And it's exhausting to read this. Okay. Thus, once Abel started to use Signal for this matter in August 2024, there can be no serious doubt that she was on actual notice that litigation was reasonably foreseeable and was therefore under a clear and continuing duty to preserve all relevant communications in her possession. Wrong. Actually, there's full serious doubt. There's the fact that she was not put on notice with the November 9th, 2023 letter. Even if she was, I think that might be the employer. That would apply to Jones Works, because Wayfarer and Baldoni were Jones Works' client. There's the fact that everything went well, which negates the November 9th letter anyway. Even if the clause was something that you could seriously say, okay, yeah, that's your heads up to preserve things. The fact that everything went well, according to Blake Lively herself, everything went well and the film was completed with no further problems, negates that clause. The use of the PR people, the crisis PR, like the timing of the switch to Signal, given that it was the preferred communication of the two crisis PR people retained, that's not a coincidence. As far as I'm concerned, that's my interpretation of it. The cease and desist, the first one being the day before the New York Times article was released, telling everyone to shut up in anticipation of that. And in that letter containing the formal request to preserve all documents, and the fact that all documents were actually preserved from that point, because these two motions themselves admit that. Oh, we only got documents from the 20th of December, and they're sitting there scratching their ass, wondering why that's happened. Well, that's because the date that the notice was received. And by the way, that notice applied to Blake Lively. She's the one who issued that request. Stephanie Jones didn't. The collaboration between Stephanie Jones and Blake Lively doing these motions, and not just these motions, so you can look at everything going all the way back, is just absolutely wild. And Stephanie Jones, just has this kind of almost entitlement that, well, Blake Lively asked for it, so I should get it too. But it bothers me as well. It's like all of these attempts to silence people. All along the way, everyone who has said anything tried to defend themselves. Whether it be the parties themselves, Wayfarer, the PR girls, Jed Wallace, or us content creators, including me personally, attempting to shut us all up. And here now, they have absolutely nothing. That she's got nothing whatsoever. She's admitting that she's got nothing. Both Stephanie Jones and Blake Lively, embarrassingly so, are admitting they have absolutely nothing. They litigated with nothing. They relied on discovery given their evidence. It is not done so. So now they're saying, well, we still got nothing. But Judge, I tell you what, take my word for it, right? They they deliberately deleted their text messages. They used an app specifically for that. And now we don't have the messages. I want you to tell everyone, tell the jury, they did this. They did it to spite us. They did it deliberately to hide what they did. And I want you to tell the jury these messages definitely would have made them look bad. And the jury should look at it that way. Also, Judge, again, as is my MO, I want you to tell them to zip it. They cannot come out and say and deny this. And whilst you're there, demand that they pay for that privilege by returning attorneys' fees and costs. This is not a victim. Neither of these people are victims. In 1 week, we had the anniversary of metadata. Yeah, so that's that. We have the anniversary of metadata. We have Banjam we had the Banjam anniversary last month. We did a live for that. Next week is the metadata one. And I've said it before, right? The timing of all these things happening. Like, as soon as the film did well, Blake Lively saw pound signs, wanted the second one. Stephanie Jones at the same time was losing Jen Abel and Wayfarer, who by this point were becoming quite a serious client because the film did so bloody well. And she took the phone, gave the messages to Blake Lively out of spite. Everyone is now suing everyone. I'm sure Liz Plank is a bigger role in all of this. I think she's somewhere in the middle, and she seems to have connections with all the key players in this. She knows Claire Ayub. Suddenly we have a recording, which has been wildly taken out of context until you hear it, and then suddenly the context is there, and it's all drama. It's nothing. And then we have an absolutely incredible motion for judgment on the pleadings from Wayfarer. Lively's not happy about it. And we've got the upcoming motion for summary judgment. And she's not going to do well because she has to admit she's got nothing. Her own deposition transcript, which is in evidence, has already admitted she's got nothing, only what her attorneys told her. How do her attorneys know that she's been smeared for the best part of a year? And the dates that she's apparently been smeared changes to suit whatever she's filing. Initially, it was from August. Then it was from, earlier on in the year. Then it was ongoing. It's still ongoing now. Then it moved back to the start of production, which was a whole year before. And now in this motion, she's alleged it's from August again, August 2024 again. So I'm exasperated. I am. When I went through the justice system, I just wanted to put my story across, put in the evidence, and comply with the rules, and whatever outcome, so be it. Most people do not play these games. They do not file sham lawsuits to get, information, and they do not constantly try to silence the other side. Anyway, so that's my opinion of the Jones Works motion, which is basically the title I've gone with is Stephanie copies Blake's homework, and that's how I feel about it. It is largely a lot of what Lively has written, with the odd kind of reference here and there, which tailors it more to the claims, the complaint in the Jones-Abel case. But it's nothing. It's very contradictory as well. So I think actually this may not help. It's not going to help Stephanie Jones. I really don't think it actually helps Blake Lively. I think it could actually undermine her motion. But we will see. So that's it from me, and we'll see what happens next. Thank you.